You're listening to the Break Podcast powered by Career Cloud.
March 8th, I lost my mom to suicide. The pandemic hit March 13th. And then a couple months later, the company that I had been with was acquired by another organization, and then culture became toxic.
And
People that had been with the company 25, 30 years started leaving. I decided to leave. This all happened within 6 months. And when I made the decision to leave, I felt lost and confused. And that flipping of the switch for me was asking myself, what do I want to do? But who do I want to be? And it ultimately came down to, for me, fulfillment is making a positive impact on other people's lives. And I would have never known the possibilities of what could be and where I'm at now if I didn't go through that. If you believe in yourself, other people will believe in you.
This episode is sponsored by ZipRecruiter. If you need a change and are looking for a new job, or if you're looking to hire for your small business, please check out ZipRecruiter today. Their smart technology matches the right candidates to the right jobs and sends new opportunities right to your inbox. They make finding a job or hiring the right person easier than ever. ZipRecruiter, the smarter way to hire. Try ZipRecruiter for free today by going to ZipRecruiter.com and tell them I sent you. Danielle, welcome to The Break. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited for our conversation today.
Excellent. So I got to kick it off. I was watching your video that you did for your book, and I was blown away at how big your truck is. So I had to ask right off the bat, like, how big are the rims on that truck? And why are you stepping out of a gigantic truck like that? I love it, I must say, but I want to start there.
So it's an F-250 4x4 extended cab. There are 38-inch tires, and it's on an 8-inch lift. So it is a big, ginormous truck. And the first question everybody asks is, how do you get in and out of it? But I have AMP research bars that come down and step. So actually, when my kids were twin boys, I believe when they're 4 years old is when we got the truck, they can actually climb into it by themselves. And you will often see me wear heels getting in and out of that truck.
I was just going to say the heels probably help a little bit, right?
I mean, they do add a little 6-inch lift to my my height, at least.
Oh, excellent. Well, I think you were saying you actually have 2 lifted trucks. Is that correct?
I do. So the F-250 is the primary driver of my husband. That's what he drives. And then I have my primary driver is a lifted Tahoe with a 6-inch lift on 35s. So I will drive that majority of the time because I have kids and I'm always, driving them around, and I got a third row. But I always take his grocery shopping because it's easier because I just load the groceries like straight into the truck. I don't have to bend down. So I do drive his all the time.
Excellent. Well, I think that is a great spot to start for our audience to understand you and your personality and everything else that we're going to talk about being unstoppable, grit, resilience. And so I wanted to start there. So thanks for that. My next question is, your mission. I'm really big on purpose statements. And so I read your mission, and it says your mission is clear: to help people like you, like me, to discover the power of resilience, courage, unwavering determination in the face of adversity. Break through your roadblocks and reach your goals. Don't just survive the demands of life. This is your time to thrive. I was going to ask you why resilience is such a big topic for you. And then, of course, I read your about page, and I was like, oh, okay, that all makes sense. But in your own words, can you tell the audience why this topic of resilience and grit is so personal to you and why it's kind of your life's mission?
I believe that all of us face challenges in our life, whether it's personally or professionally. And there's 2 approaches that we can take. We can either respond, where we become this victim mentality and everything that takes place in our life happens to us, or when we're faced with challenges, trials and tribulations of life, we take the approach in response to, how am I going to overcome this? And there have been a lot of challenges in my life. Like many of us, we each have a unique story, But I found that throughout my life, everyone has always asked, how do you continue to push forward? How do you continue to bounce back? And how do you continue to have a positive mindset through all the challenges you've experienced? And I've started to realize, based off of what people were coming to advice for me for, was resilience and grit and determination and perseverance. And I said, okay, well, if this is a strength of mine, how can I help other people develop that strength? And that's what inspired my mission, was to help other people to be able to face adversity and come out stronger.
And so I'm not going to go through all of the the points that in your timeline, which is a great layout, by the way. I love that. But I do want to touch on a couple of them because I think it makes sense as to why people kind of have sought you out for this type of thing. So number one, I mean, you are married to a military man. Your husband is a Black Hawk helicopter, which has to be on many levels disruptive and nerve-wracking. Talk to us a little bit about his journey and how you have sort of adapted to that type of life.
It was a big shift for our life. He had graduated from the MBA program. He had started a business, ran and built a successful business. And then 8 months after we got married, at the age of 32 years old, he joined the military. So he's going to basic training with 18-year-olds that are just coming out of high school. And he is taking this major shift in life. And at first, I was supportive. And then before we got engaged, and then of course, once we got engaged, I was like, wait a minute. I am not ready for us to be moving around all the time. I had just bought a house. I had a successful career. I was not ready for that. And so, but then eventually I saw that he wasn't happy. And I didn't want my reservations to hold him back from pursuing what he wanted. And that's when we said, okay, go join the military. So he joins the military 8 months after we got married. And the intention was, we're going to join the reserves because they don't move as much. Right. Well, we joined the reserves, and right after he gets home, he gets into the aviation unit, and we move from Newport Beach, California, right on the cliffs of Laguna Beach, to Enterprise, Alabama, where the world's largest statue of a bug called the boll weevil is. And there is no Starbucks, Target, shopping mall for an hour away. It was a big shift. But I've learned a lot through the unexpected, that in the unexpected changes of life, there's a lot of beauty. I would have probably stayed in the comfort zone of California my whole life if it wasn't for the military. And the military has exposed us to a whole nother life that we didn't even know was out there. And there's been some embraces of it. And there's also, I kind of said, like, this love-hate relationship with the military, because obviously I don't like when he gets deployed. And at the same time, there is a deep level of community and appreciation for our country through the military.
Yeah. In that, I mean, what you're highlighting, with any uncertainty is I think we tend to only see the negatives because our brains are like hardwired to pick out the dangers and the things that we want to avoid and stuff that gives us discomfort. But there are massive upsides to uncertainty, like volatility, risk, uncertainty. They cut both ways. And it is part of becoming resilient when you can start to program your mind to see more of the upside. And I know that's a big part of your message as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we start to focus on what we can learn and grow from some of the adversities, that's what helps us push forward. And again, it goes back to that, not thinking about what's happening to me, but how can I take the challenges I'm going through right now? How can I learn? How can I grow? How can I be a better person? How can I see maybe how every challenge I'm going through in life is preparing me for something new, something better, something different in my life?
You had a pretty big career in sales. You seem to have an aptitude for sales, or at least you found very early what you were good at. Talk to us a little bit about that journey and the timelines and where, some of this other disruption and things, happened along the way.
Well, before we had jumped on, you shared that you have been a serial entrepreneur. So I had no intentions on being an entrepreneur. And at the same time, I realized kind of looking back that I had such a passion for it at an early age. Aside from selling Girl Scout cookies when I was a kid, I started my first business when I was 7. And it was me during the holidays going and cutting down mistletoe from the trees in Saddleback, California. And I would tie them up with a little velvet red ribbon and I would sell them outside the grocery store. And that's how I would raise money to pay for presents for my siblings. So that's my entrepreneurial journey started. And that's where my passion for sales started. So I had a career in medical tech sales. I spent 15 years in medical sales. I was very fortunate. I had earned awards, and what came with those awards was obviously the financial reward, but these beautiful, lavish paid vacations that I always enjoyed. So I got to travel around the world to Cabo and Jamaica and Costa Rica on these presidents clubs and got to enjoy that experience. And I spent 15 years there before leaving the corporate world and setting out to my own adventure.
And so a couple of the maybe pit stops along the way, from what I've read, you have twin boys who were premature, born premature, very premature, and your husband gets deployed. So you are sort of in a situation where you are have a very demanding travel career. Your husband is no longer there for you and for the kid at that moment in time. I assume there was a lot of uncertainty in that particular period of time. Can you talk to us about what that felt like and how you dealt with that whole time period?
So yes, my kids were born 6 weeks premature. And that in itself was a big shift because parenthood is hard, whether you have 1, 5, however many kids you have. For me, it was, they were born 6 weeks early. So my anticipation of what motherhood would look like, me wearing my Lululemon leggings and going to mommy and me day on my maternity leave was not that. My maternity leave was sitting alongside them at the NICU and hearing the heart monitors go off and the oxygen level monitors go off when they would forget to breathe. And right when they came home, 2 weeks after they got home, our house got hit by a Category 5 hurricane. We lost our power for 4 days, and one of my boys' heart monitor was hooked up to a generator. And we were able to get through that. And then just less than a year after that, he deployed to Iraq. So he was gone in Iraq for a year. When he left, our kids were 1.5 years old. They were in cribs. They were learning to walk, learning to talk. And while I was at home caring for them, I was still in that demanding job. I was traveling 60% of the year. And I remember the time when he told me that he was going to get deployed. My immediate response was, I'm going to have to quit my job. Mm-hmm. There's no way I could do this job traveling with kids with you deployed. And I remember feeling so disheartened and angry that I had dedicated so much of my life to getting to a point where I was really happy with the career that I was in, the position that I was in. I was a Fortune 500 senior sales manager with a company that I loved. And I would just felt so angry and disheartened that I was going to have to quit. And then I started to shift my mind. And instead of thinking of, I have to quit, I started thinking of, well, what's possible? What if I just took it one day at a time? And if it gets to the point where I believe that the best decision is to quit, then I'll quit. And it's not a matter of me quitting on myself. It's a matter of just maybe taking a pause and always being able to go back to something. But I ended up never quitting. I ended up staying with the company. The first kind of steps that I took was I wrote down what was most important to me. And I made a commitment to myself. If at all possible, I wanted to be there to either wake up with my kids or put them to bed. Sometimes that meant red eye flights. Sometimes that meant getting up super early. But my goal was to always be there to either put them to bed or to wake up with them the times that I would travel. And then I was always intentional about each weekend that I would be home. I was intentional about making sure there was always something fun on the calendar, that I had something to look forward to, that I got to spend quality time with my kids. And they did everything with me. Sometimes it was even working out in our backyard, doing some landscaping that I needed to do. And they were part of it. I got them little shovels, and they were like little sidekicks every step of the way. And then the next step that I took was I leaned in on my support system, and I learned to ask for help. And sometimes we see asking for help as a sign of weakness, and we're weak if we ask for help. But what I've learned through the experience is when we ask for help, it's an opportunity to experience joy and connection with people. So I have deeper relationships now than before the deployment because I learned to ask for help, and my friends started to have a sense of a purpose of their own because they were helping their friend, and we got more connected. And there was times where, I was very fortunate. My in-laws moved out to be near us. So I want to recognize and be upfront that that's not always the case for a lot of people. My in-laws did live close. My mother-in-law did the overnights. We did have a full-time nanny. And there were some times where my in-laws weren't around. So I would fly my parents out and try to get them to help. It was a temporary situation. Wasn't ideal, but it was temporary. And I took it day by day. And through that experience, was able to thrive. And a lot of what I teach now comes from what I learned during that deployment.
You're listening to the Break Podcast, powered by Career Cloud.
This episode is sponsored by ZipRecruiter. If you need a change and are looking for a new job, or if you're looking to hire for your small business, please check out ZipRecruiter today. Their smart technology matches the right candidates to the right jobs and sends new opportunities right to your inbox. They make finding a job or hiring the right person easier than ever. ZipRecruiter, the smarter way to hire. Try ZipRecruiter for free today by going to ZipRecruiter.com and tell them I sent you. So much to unpack there, and I just have a couple observations. I think one, if people in our audience haven't been in a NICU, and I have been in NICU, I've been there to visit a friend who had a baby daughter born at 24 weeks, which is almost unsurvivable. And being in there and listening and seeing how small and fragile the kids are and the monitors, I mean, that will change your life to be there. And I can't imagine having my own children there. But I just wanted to say that is a very, very big and profound thing at a very critical time in your life as a parent, and obviously at the kids' lives. The idea that you made this shift, I want to point this out because I think this is super key to building a resilient mind. You made this shift from saying, I have to make this one big decision, like I'm going to quit my job, right? That's a thinking, planning, we're trying to predict the future mode, to more of a design thinking mindset of, okay, how might I create the ideal situation? Or how might I weather what's going on? How might I put plans in place in order to make this less or more tolerable? And that, I think, is such a critical mindset shift where you say, okay, this isn't one big overwhelming thing. This is a series of steps, and I just need to figure out, be on the path, take the next step, and the next, and the next. And I'm now open to possibilities. I am open to the idea that I still might have to quit my job, or something else could come of this, and we could find a middle ground. And I think we are, like, as a society, are so black and white sometimes. I see this every day when I'm talking to career folks. And just that one mindset shift of asking how might I instead of yes or no is so critical.
You nailed it. You nailed it. But you said something that was unique that I haven't heard this perspective before. And you'll have to refresh me. Something about it was the making one big decision or designing a decision.
Yeah. So what I said was making one when we think forward into the future and think we have to make one big decision. What we're actually doing is trying to predict the future. We are predicting 10 steps ahead. And that is like thinking planning mode, right? That's like the logical, you design a building by taking all of these steps and it's very predictable, but life's not predictable. Life is inherently uncertain. And so the only way that you get around that and you keep a sort of a flexible mindset is this is the type of stuff that's taught in like design thinking courses and human-centered design is creating a very open, how might I approach this problem? And the way that you can approach a problem is never one way. It's always multifaceted. There's always a number of ways that you could, skin the proverbial cat. And so taking this like experimental approach of, okay, I have what we would call an opportunity area of, I need to solve this problem. I could solve it 5 different ways. What is the very next step that I need to take in order to understand and have information whether or not I continue on this path or I go to, plan B or C or D. And that's a much more dynamic and playful and experimental approach. And that is how great investors deal with uncertainty. It's how designers deal with uncertainty, and it's how entrepreneurs deal with uncertainty. And if we can pull, more of those lessons back into our everyday decisions, I think we're going to end up making much more flexible and dynamic decisions and ultimately be happier because we find a path or we create a path instead of choosing an option.
I love it. Absolutely. And I want to add to that is when we start to design what our possibilities are going to look like, there's no one linear path.
Exactly.
Sometimes, especially as an entrepreneur when we're owning a business, or even if we're just setting goals, sometimes we get very finite in saying, this is my goal and this is what the steps I need to take to get there. But sometimes there's pivots that happen along the way. Sometimes your goal and one part of maybe your goal is one way, maybe different in another way. And I'm going to give an example. I know that when I first had kids, the first question when people found out I was having twins was, are you going to quit your job? It's like, wow, geez, guys. It was the first question everyone asked me. And then, of course, once I left corporate and I became a keynote speaker and I started keynote speaking full time, the first question people ask is, well, how many speaking engagements are you going to do, especially when you have kids? And it's just like this perception that there's so many limitations we have based off of where we're at in our life. And instead of thinking of what we can and can't achieve, I always give yourself the opportunity to ask yourself, what do you want to be doing in your career? And how does that align with the lifestyle that you particularly want? And know that each phase in your life may be different. I do travel a lot now, not as much as I did when I was living in Alabama and I was traveling 250 nights a year when I was living in Alabama for my job, but I still travel a lot. But I also travel a lot of areas where I get to bring my kids with me. I get to bring my husband with me. So it's different. Now, when my kids are older, I'll probably do more international traveling where I'm traveling all over the world because I love to travel. But maybe I don't do as much as that now. I believe that when you really look at your goals, not only think about, it's okay to make pivots along the way, be open to possibilities, be open, look at what does success mean to you. Not what society says, not where society says you think you should be in your career or in your business, but where do you want to be? And how does that align with the life that you want?
Yeah, I love that. I think just to riff, like being open to possibilities means essentially like having a design mindset of how can I change this from one way or another to like a middle road. So the example is that you get is like, okay, and I think you say this too, like you talk a lot about changing have tos to get tos. And so the example is like, okay, you had to travel a lot, and now you get to design family vacations around your work. Like that is, that's a much more playful middle road where you get both sides of it. And I made this sort of light bulb transformation earlier on in my career where I was traveling, I was doing startups and stuff like that. And my wife has a career. She's a doctor. It's very important. And we need to keep her first in our household. And so as I was designing my way out of corporate work, I was like, I used to feel like, oh man, kids, like that's kind of hampering my growth. And I just made this, it's like, no, I have an opportunity right now to design my future and say like, I get to design a work where I am home and available and get to pick my kids up from school if they're sick, or get to play hooky with them and take them somewhere in the summer. Like I was in more control, and I was more able to say like, here's what I want, what I don't want. And here's the path to figuring out how to design that. And my kids have essentially become like the centerpiece of my career. Like I talk about being unbreakable. I talk about designing life so that I can be there for these guys right here. And so that's, I think, like the core feeling that you and I are getting at is it's not black or white. It's not society telling you, oh, you have to go do this job that's designed for like industrial, labor organization. It's like we have so many tools available at our disposal, but we're lacking that mindset shift of being open to possibilities and the multiple ways that we could solve a problem.
I got goosebumps when you were saying that, because I remember when I left corporate, I had lost so much of my identity because I had tied my identity to senior sales manager, Fortune 500 company, region manager of the year, salary, income, stock options, company car. I mean, hey, it was a lucrative career. It was amazing. For a long time was the primary breadwinner of my family. But it took me a long time to shift that mindset and saying success is not based off of those titles. I am building a business around the lifestyle that I want. Very similar to you. I get to my kids, because they were premature, they are immune compromised. They get sick all the time. I have now built a business where I get to be home a lot of the times. And when I travel, I still have family support, but I get to work my business schedule around where they're at. And a lot of times now I get to go to California and visit my family, and my kids will come with me and they'll be with their grandparents. Maybe I work remotely while I'm out there, but I get to spend an extended period of time now that they're out there. And I love it. I get to be present with my kids way more than I did while still building a business and a career that I love. And more importantly, I believe that I get to make a greater impact. As a manager, you get to be an influencer of change when you're leading a team, but it's a very small set of people that you really get to influence and inspire and motivate. You're probably looking at 10, maybe obviously the higher you go, the more people you do. But now I get to be in front of an audience of 1,000 people and see those moments in their eyes when you're talking on stage, and you see those light bulb moments where they start to kind of tear up and they go, wow, this resonates, this message resonates with me. And I can see that they're going to take some of these tools and they're going to start to apply it. And then you get the messages later on that says, wow, I heard you speak, and that when you said XYZ, it really resonated with me. And here's the changes that I made. Like that to me is worth more than any title that I will ever have in the corporate world. Because to me now, I measure my success based off of the impact and legacy that I get to leave behind.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so speaking of the light bulb moments for the people that you speak to, in this transition of when you sort of left your lucrative career and embarked on, building your own business and getting your message out there, was there any particular light bulb moment, or story, or just, I guess, single moment that really flipped the switch for you from, it is okay for me to leave this thing that I've invested in for a very long time and go this direction?
Oh, I would say so. Talk about uncertainty. Leading up to my decision to leave, my life had been flipped completely upside down. My husband had just returned home from his deployment, January 26th. And when he left, they were in cribs. They were drinking kind of out of bottles. They were walking. They were learning their first words. Now he comes back. They're getting in and out of their own toddler beds. They are talking back at him in complete sentences. They are much more independent than they were when he left. And he came from Iraq. He came from a war zone. The week that he left Iraq, his base was hit 13 times by missiles. And here he is coming from one war zone, he says, kind of to another, just landmines of Legos that are all around the house. And that was a big transition for us. It was not easy. A lot of people will ask me, what's the hardest part about the deployment? And I believe the hardest part is the transition home.
Wow.
The emotional transition home. And right as we started to kind of get our feet and our rhythm going, March 8th, I lost my mom to suicide. And that was obviously very unexpected. And as I was planning her celebration of life, and I had booked a trip out to California to go meet with her friends, the pandemic hit March 13th, just a couple days later. So here I went from transition of a husband coming back from deployment, losing my mom unexpectedly, then the pandemic and the uncertainty that was going on with the pandemic. Plus I had immune compromised kids, specifically with respiratory challenges. And then a couple months later, the company that I had been with was acquired by another organization, and then culture became toxic. People that had been with the company 25, 30 years started leaving. I decided to leave. This all happened within 6 months. So it's not all of a sudden one day I woke up and I said, okay, I'm out. All of this happened. And when I made the decision to leave, I felt lost and confused, and I was experiencing panic attacks, and I was still trying to cope and heal with the loss of my mom. I was still trying to navigate with my husband being home, and trying to figure out how to be a parent, because I feel like you're trying to figure that out every day.
Yes.
And it really was, I wouldn't say it wasn't like one defining moment. I believe that a lot of what transpired afterwards was a lot of soul searching, a lot of reflection, a lot of self-discovery. And that flipping of the switch for me was asking myself, who do I want to be? Not what do I want to do, but who do I want to be? And it ultimately came down to, for me, fulfillment is making a positive impact on other people's lives. To see their smiles, to see them go through adversity and pick themselves back up. And that's what really inspired me to start speaking and to write a book and to do a podcast. And it's still a journey. It's always ever evolving, but I'm so glad that I took that risk. And I look back, and I obviously would never want to go through that again. But I also see the beauty that came out of it. And I probably would have still been with the company I was with if it hadn't been some through those circumstances. And I would have never known the possibilities of what could be and where I'm at now if I didn't go through that. And now I get to live my mom's legacy through my message.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. I mean, I would say the two most common propellers of massive change are, one, a lot of people say, going through COVID, understanding mortality, that kind of thing, and then experiencing mortality very closely with a loved one. um, tends to really, really do that. I mean, it's a common theme with people that I talk to on this podcast as well. How did your mom, specifically your mom's suicide, if you had to weight that factor in the numerous factors that drove you to make a change, like how big was that event?
I don't believe I could weight them. I think the more immediate impact was leaving the company because it was my day-to-day stuff. My mom and I had a very tumultuous relationship. My mom kidnapped me when I was 2 years old, and I didn't know that she did it. I grew up thinking that my dad had abandoned us. And my mom I saw as this role model of perseverance, because here she was, a single mom, going back to school, serving as a waitress. And she was my role model to me. I didn't learn until later that she kidnapped me from my dad, and I eventually met my dad. And there was also kind of a lot of mental health stuff with my mom. So we had a strange relationship for 13 years. So when I lost my mom, I believe that my more immediate impact that was so close to me was my career, but the lasting impact was my mom the most. And what I learned through losing my mom was the power of forgiveness. And that even though there was a lot of anger and resentment towards what some of the decisions that she made, I believe that when we learn to forgive, it doesn't negate their actions. What forgiveness does, it gives us the opportunity to heal. And I believe that if I had given myself the opportunity to forgive her and if she was still here today, I would have an open, honest dialogue conversation, but a conversation with the goal to heal and love and be empathetic. Because now I look at my mom in a completely different light. I look at her, instead of being this like monster, you kidnapped me from my dad and you kicked me out when I was 17 and there's physical stuff that happened. I look at her in a sense of saying, wow, my mom had a horrible upbringing and she suffered from mental health for a long, long time. And at the end of the day, some of the decisions that my mom made were not great. They were very hurtful. But there's also a lot of decisions that she made to better the life for me. And I'm going to be empathetic to the fact that she was doing the best that she could given the circumstances that she had. And with each generation, my family generation is going to get better and better. And we're going to continue to break the mold of what history has shown. My grandma's been divorced twice. My dad's been married 3 times. Like, it's just, there's not a lot of stability, but my husband and I have been married for 10 years and we're going to work through everything we can to break that mold. But it starts with being vulnerable and being empathetic to the people around us.
Is there anything in lessons from her or from this time period of sort of healing that really permeates through the book or through your message that you can really tie back to that time period of coping with your mom and her passing?
I would believe that in each of the chapters, our most formidable years are scientifically, when you read a bunch of psychology magazines or articles or journals. I have a background in psychology through my bachelor's. Our most formidable years are between the ages of 0 and 8, which, saying that is kind of scary because my kids are 6. So I'm really hoping they don't spend the rest of their life in therapy like I did. But our most formidable years are between 0 and 8. So when we're going through challenges, when we're thinking about making decisions, when we're maybe hearing criticism or feedback from somebody on how we may be perceived, look back to our upbringing. Look back to how we were raised, what influenced our decisions, not just by our parents, but also by situations that happened to us when we were kids, by some of the teachers or coaches that influenced us. And ask ourselves, how were those experiencing possibly impacting and influencing the decisions that we're making today? I had somebody in I'll say this, when I was younger, when I was a young kid, I had a kid that would throw my glasses across the bus. And then eventually I think I got into middle school and he would say, Danielle, body of a goddess, face from hell. So what a lot of people don't know is that for a long, long time, I thought I was ugly. And I thought that no one would want me. And I had very low self-esteem. And it's taken me a long time to kind of break that and look at just appreciation for who I am internally, externally, by saying, wait, that was one person's words that they said to describe me, but that's not what I need to use to describe myself. So always looking back, you'll kind of see a theme throughout the book is always looking back and what experiences took place in our younger childhood that may be impacting how we are today, and how can we break that cycle so that we can show up as the best version of ourselves.
There's that word break, which I love. Talk to us about grit then. What is grit in your words?
So grit by definition from Angela Duckworth, who she did this TED talk on grit, and it was passion and perseverance towards long-term goals. And you can have passion and you can have perseverance, but if you don't have action, then you're not gonna get very far. So I believe that passion and perseverance towards long-term goals and commitment to your actions. And when setbacks occur, it's the courage to keep going, the resilience to keep going, knowing that we're always going to fall, we're always going to come across pitfalls, we're always going to have setbacks, but it's what you do with those setbacks and those challenges that define the success of the future.
And so how does grit differ from resilience, I guess?
Resilience is, can you keep picking yourself up? So let's give an example of riding a bike. Resilience is you fall down, you pick yourself back up. You fall down, you pick yourself back up. Grit is you fall down, you pick yourself up, but why? What's the why behind it? Well, for my kid right now, I have 6-year-old twin boys, like I said, one of them's riding his bike, the other one isn't riding his bike. The one that is learning to ride the bike right now, the passion is to be able to catch up with his brother. So that's like the motivator. So grit is more kind of underlining what's the motivator to keep the resilience going when setbacks occur.
Okay, so like from your life, you could have quit your job, healed, been emotionally healed, got back up. I'm Danielle, everything's great, but not then gone forward into answering that question of who do I want to be and where do I want to go and who do I want to help? Is that kind of the gist?
For me, it is, I'm not going to let one person's definition of me or one situation define who I am or what I can accomplish.
Right.
For me, that's what I always look at when it comes to situations.
So I'm really curious. I mean, I listen to this and I hear people all the time. Okay, grit, that makes sense. Great. Sounds awesome. I don't know how to develop grit, or I don't know how to become more resilient. I think about that, and you talk about this too, that nagging voice in your head, that self-doubt, right? That creeps in. How do people start to get over that? How can we develop the grittiness and the resilience we need to continue forward?
I would say to somebody, you're probably more resilient and gritty than you give yourself credit for. So a lot of times when I am working with possibly a job seeker, for example, the first thing I'll say is like, write down, there's 2 ways that you can approach this. One of them is like from a professional and personal level. From a professional level, write down all of the accomplishments that you've had in your life. What are some of I come from a sales background. So if I'm working with sales professionals, I'm saying, okay, well, what are some of the sales awards that you've achieved? What were some of the ways that you've grown your business, year-over-year growth, national rankings and attainment? What are some new skills that you've developed over the years? Because all of that has taken grit. All of that has taken resilience. from a personal life, what are some of the challenges that you've overcome and what steps have you taken? What are the challenges that you faced and what steps have you taken to overcome those challenges? When we actually take a step and we pause and reflect on our life and we start to write down some of the challenges, the milestones, the accomplishments that we've had, we boost our confidence and realization that we are a lot more gritty and resilient than we give ourselves credit for. We have not been, I'm 40 years old. I have not become 40 years old today without going through a whole bunch of challenges. Whether people relate to my story or not, people that are 40, you can't be 40 years old and not have gone through some challenges in your life. So recognize them, put weight to them and look at what steps did you take to overcome them and how has that shaped and helped you into the person that you are today.
You're listening to the Break Podcast powered by Career Cloud.
This episode is sponsored by ZipRecruiter. If you need a change and are looking for a new job, or if you're looking to hire for your small business, please check out ZipRecruiter today. Their smart technology matches the right candidates to the right jobs and sends new opportunities right to your inbox. They make finding a job or hiring the right person easier than ever. ZipRecruiter, the smarter way to hire. Try ZipRecruiter for free today by going to ZipRecruiter.com and tell them I sent you. Yeah, I think that's a great starting point. Are you familiar with Benjamin Hardy and the Gap and the Gain book at all?
No.
Dr. Benjamin Hardy. All right, well, this is a great one for you, and I'll make sure to send it to you. I highly recommend it. It's probably the best book I've read this year. Dr. Benjamin Hardy works with Dan Sullivan, who's like the greatest entrepreneurial coach right now. He's older, but they write books together. And the Gap and the Gain is basically, there's two ways to measure your progress. One is from where you are today to your ideal. And that's the gap, because you're always short of that ideal. Like no matter what you do, you're always going to be short of that. The other way is to turn around and measure backwards, and that's the gain. So by looking backwards and really giving credence to everything that you've gone through, accomplished, done well, learned, you are showing yourself that you have done things, and it should build your belief in yourself. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I think in my community, we have a wins journal. I do one. This is something I was awful at when I was younger is it was always the gap. It was always the goal, and it never mattered unless I got to the goal. And now I'm writing down every day, little wins from the person I was yesterday, the person I was, a month ago, whatever it is. And in our community, we have one as well. I love that. Staying in the gain is so important. And you're totally right. Every single one of us has those wins, and we just need to document them, and we need to start recognizing them and believing them ourselves. So I think it's a great starting point. Anything else?
Oh, it's interesting you said about writing them down too. It reminds me of, I was working with somebody recently. She's an entrepreneur, but she was going to go back for a position in corporate. And she was just she was feeling deflated, defeated about this whole job search process. And I remember when we went through that exercise of write down all of your accomplishments, she sent me this. She went on Instagram the next day and she said, "Hey, I've been working with Danielle," and she had me write down all my accomplishments. And she goes, "Man, I'm a badass." Like her whole face lit up, and you can see the confidence that was regained within her. So yeah, I mean, it's remind yourself, for you listeners out there, remind yourself everything that you have overcome. And as you said, Mike, celebrate those gains, not the gaps, the gains. I love that message. I cannot wait to read that book.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really changed my perspective, and it's changed my perspective with how I talk to my kids as well. Like always, we want to solve a problem right away with a kid. And so sometimes we're critical, like, what did you do wrong? But flipping that script, and letting a kid understand how they've gotten better, even if it's not perfect to the standard or to the ideal that we want, letting them know, oh yeah, last week you got in trouble for this as well, but this time you did something a little bit, better. I think it's a huge concept for people to develop resilience and grit. And I think the other piece that I want you to talk about is like with grit, you have a goal, or you do have something that you're working towards. And so I'm assuming part of developing grit is being very clear on what and why you are working, what you are working towards and the why of that. Is that correct?
1,000%. So I have every single year for as long as I can remember, even in my early 20s, is every single year I've sat down, and a lot of people call them a vision board. I call them a dream board, or now I think I'm going to start calling it a board of intention, because every single year I write down my goals for the year, and I will write them down. I put pictures to them. And if you were sitting in my office right now, you would see right above my desk is my board. So anytime I'm feeling frustrated or feeling stuck, or I'm not maybe as motivated as I normally am, I look at my board and go, well, what's my why? Why do I continue to wake up every morning? Why do I continue to put the efforts in place? And that's my reminder why. I've got on my dream board, I've got a picture of my family. I have a picture of mission trips because I really want to take another mission trip. I've got pictures of where I want to travel to, Capri, Italy, workout, with my Peloton. But I love looking back each year and seeing the accomplishments that I've made and saying, this is a goal that I want to achieve. And to go back each year and start crossing them off is such a sense of accomplishment. And we've paid off school loans that normally would have taken 20 years for the average person, but we've paid off school loans because we wanted to do it. We were motivated to do it. We had a plan in place to do it. And to be debt-free by the age of 35 was such a rewarding feeling. That's just one example amongst a lot of other examples. But I believe very profoundly in being intentional about setting aside time every year to put together goals, put together a plan, and stay committed to your goals.
Yeah, and I think always tying it back to that why, that main mission that you have, purpose for other people, right? Like I'm really a fan of purpose over passion because I think you can cultivate passion, but I think you have to really like dig deep and understand your purpose at a core. I don't think your purpose actually changes that much, whereas passions can kind of change that much, but it takes a ton of work to like really dig it out of you and understand what that is. So I think that's part of it. I want to dig in on this vision board thing. I'm really curious because I don't have, and I'm looking around my office right now and I'm like, yeah, that's something I need. I put up right here. So, is it for the year or is it for like the future? Are there time bound things on it, like pre-Italy or whatever, like what, and is it just representations of the goals or are there statements written out? I'm just really curious on the details of what this looks like.
The detail of it. So I have a vision board that I do every single year. Some of it includes maybe some long-term goals. As a military family, I get to be very flexible with my goals because there's been a lot of times where I've had that dream vacation booked. And then all of a sudden the military says, nope, you can't go anywhere. So but I'm not going to get down on myself for not putting a timeline on that. So I'm always open to flexibility. But I would say that once I create my dream board, then I start looking at, okay, well, how am I going to implement it? So if one of my goals is to take my kids to the snow, we live in Florida, it's hot here. So I said, okay, well, when am I going to do it? And I'll start to look at my calendar ahead of time. Okay, this is a trip that I'm going to take where we're going to go look at snow. But also I have my big goals over the next couple of years. Maybe I have one big goal that's over in 5 years that maybe I break it down into, okay, well, let's say paying off debt when we were paying off all our debt. We want to pay our house off by 35 years old. This is the amount. I'm going to put this much down on the house every single year. That was maybe a big goal that I broke down into little goals. And even down to the day is how I kind of set my intention. So every single day I have this journal that sits on my desk and I write down what are the 3 priorities for my day. And that helps me stay hyper focused. 3 things. So anytime, and I love it, at the end of the day, there's always going to be a to-do list. My to-do list is like, I don't even know, probably 5,000 miles long, but I don't let it consume me but just by setting my 3 at the beginning of the morning and I just go 1, 2, 3 by the end of the day, I have a huge sense of accomplishment. And that's what gives me the motivation to keep going the next day. So I believe in goals. It's having big goals, long-term vision, yearly ones, break it down to daily ones. And sometimes you even break it down to minutes because you're setting time limits on yourself to complete certain tasks. It's even down a minute of that.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Breaking things down, right? That's the steps that we have to take. So do you have you got your board, you have supporting documentation? Do you have a document that you write every year to support this stuff? Or is it's just there and then you're always doing your journal every day, looking at your board and making sure those 3 things are in alignment with that vision?
I would say my board is more kind of like, let's see, I'm looking at my boards. My board is, I want to do a TED Talk. I want to remodel my kitchen. I want to do a missionary trip. One of them was a tattoo I wanted. I ended up getting the tattoo last month. So that's kind of like my bigger goals. But when it comes to, I would say, more of the details, a lot of times it's either writing it down each morning, or if there's specific goals that I have, then I will schedule time on my calendar to work on it. Yeah. So I believe that it always comes down to intention. You can have goals out there, but if you're not putting intention into how you're going to achieve them, if you're not putting intention into when you're going to work on that task, then they're just goals that are out there. So, I mean, if I've got something coming up I have my book release coming out February 21st. Well, okay, I have actually days scheduled out in January and February of when I'm doing specific tasks to help the book launch. And they're already on my calendar because I know that that's what's being an intention to being to success in alignment with our goals.
Okay, makes tons of sense. I got one more really detailed question and then we're gonna pull it back. But the journal, is it just a blank journal, hardcover journal? Is there a specific journal that you use? I'm trying to get my readers or my listeners all the details that we can suck out of your brain and your processes.
I like simplicity. So I have looked at a bunch of journals out there, and if you start telling me to track my water intake and what I'm eating every single day, I am going to go crazy. No, I don't do that. It is what I love about this one. I know my virtual background.
Okay. Yeah.
It's simple. Good. It's simple. It is just one page, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, probably 10 lines under each day. And all I do is, let's see, today I was going to be working on a podcast. For my podcast, I was doing some of the editing. I was going to be working on a new workbook for my program. And I was uploading a YouTube video. And they're crossed out. And I even have plans. I have lists for what I have on Friday. So if something I want to do it, but maybe something takes a little bit more priority, I'll put it for another day when I can kind of set the time to do it then. But I like simplicity. No, I do not like those journals that are tracking what I'm eating, what I'm drinking, and all of what I'm going to be doing per hour. I like to be a little flexible.
I must say I'm surprised this conversation didn't make it onto your 3 priorities for the day.
Maybe podcast meant working on my podcast, and I was on 2 podcasts today. So maybe it was just podcast day.
Yeah, that was it. We'll let you off the hook there. So we've talked a little bit about the book. The book does detail sort of 7 roadblocks, right, to sort of developing unstoppable grit. Can you give us a little overview or snapshot of maybe a couple of those and maybe why they're so prevalent?
Yeah, I think the biggest one and the roadblock that we have is what we believe of what success is. And so often when we look at success, we believe it's based off of what society has told us, what the media has told us, what we see on social media, what we see in movies. So there are a couple chapters that are really drilling down into defining what success means to you, not what is portrayed on the media, not what we think it should be, but what does success mean to you? Because that in itself is a big roadblock. Because when we think that success, for example, for me, when I thought success was climbing the corporate ladder and having this big successful career, of course, when I left, I was stripped of my identity. But when I started to truly define what success meant for me, I am so much happier than I've ever been before, because I stopped living off of what I thought success was going to be versus what it meant to me. So that's definitely something that they dig into. And they also look at kind of, again, where we were talking about what are some experiences that we had in our childhood and how does it impact we are today? What limiting beliefs did it framework for us? Where is that negative inner critic coming from? How can we break through all of that so we can really believe in ourselves? And in each chapter, there is a story, whether it's my own personal story, clients that I've worked with, people that I've known. There's a lot of stories in there. There's a lot of activities that help people apply what they learn from the book. And it's all backed by research too. So there's definitely some research. If I'm going to be drilling in on a point on a particular, the importance of doing something and making a change in your life, it's always going to be backed by research as well. So it's a combination of everything.
And who's it for? Who's the book? Like, who's the target archetype of person that this book is going to really help?
So they always say you write for the person that you were, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was the person that is a high achiever who has ambitious goals but is feeling stuck or feeling lost. They are at a point where they feel like they're meant for more, but they don't know what it is. They're possibly burnt out and overwhelmed. It's hard trying to balance life and a demanding job, and the demands for the workplace are just getting more and more. So it's really meant for that professional who's a higher achiever who just wants to maybe know what they want more, but they don't know what more is.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And your message of intention and clarity, right, and prioritization makes a ton of sense for figuring that stuff out. I mean, a guy that a famous investor that I really follow, he says you can have anything you want, but you can't have everything you want. And so you have to figure out how to ruthlessly prioritize for yourself. And that's part of being gritty, I think, too, is getting clarity on them. All right, I'm going to close this out with a few rapid fire questions, and then I want you to leave the audience with anything else on your mind, especially like where we can find out more about you and in your work. But here are the rapid fire questions. So you are an influencer, and and you're an author. Is there any other recent author, thought leader, or influencer that you've come across that has really caught your attention that you think people need to be tuned into?
Yes. So when I was thinking about leaving corporate, I went back on LinkedIn. I've kind of always been on it, but LinkedIn was the platform that I went to, and a post by Heather Monahan popped up, and she shared her story of being fired. And she had been with a company for 17 years, and she shared this story of being fired. And a couple of years down the road, here she became this author and podcast host and keynote speaker, which ended up the journey I ended up following. But it was because of her authenticity and vulnerability that I was captivated by her posts, and it's what inspired me to follow in that journey. She ended up being a guest on my podcast eventually, and she ended up endorsing my book as well. So it's full circle, what's possible.
Yeah, that is the magic of the good side of social media and networking in a digital age, is you can pretty much reach out and touch anyone and build a really lasting relationship. That's amazing. All right, how about a book that you're reading now, or maybe one that you've read that's just had a massive impact on your life, or any decisions that you've made in your life?
A book that made a massive impact was Start With Your Why by Simon Sinek.
Sure.
That was a big one. I read it when I was in a leadership role and looking to take that next step in my leadership role. So start with your why. And the book that I'm currently reading right now is The Body Keeps Score, which is
interesting. Tell me more, please.
It really goes into how stress and trauma impacts us as an individual. And which a lot of that goes down to the more we have the self-awareness as to why we react the way that we do, then we have the self-awareness to break the cycle. And so a lot of the time is I want to know the how, I want to know the why, so that I could reframe, so that I can adjust, so that I can change the outcome. So The Body Keeps Score was actually recommended to me by a fellow keynote speaker who served 20 years in the police force. Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's going to be on my list for sure. All right. You've given us a lot of advice, a lot to think about, but if you have like one single biggest piece of advice you would give someone just starting out, in the world today. So like a college student or high school student just coming out into the workforce, trying to figure it all out, what would that be?
If you believe in yourself, other people will believe in you. And the best way to believe yourself is to continue to invest in your own personal and professional development. When you invest in yourself, people also will invest in you.
That is a great one. I love it. All right. Last rapid fire question. A lot of uncertainty in the world. We've been talking a lot about uncertainty. What's got you really excited and energized about the next 12 months? Give us some hope and give us some, just good things to look forward to here in the next 12 months.
Well, for me, the next 12 months are going to be the book launch. So that's what I am really, really excited for. I just, for me, it's envisioning somebody reading it and them seeing what's possible for them and knowing that we're always going to face challenges. We're always going to face uncertainties, but let's lean on each other. Let's support each other. And let's see how we can come together as a community. Excellent.
I like that. All right. Where can people find out more about you? And also tell us who exactly the type of person is that can come get more help from you, who you can help, how you can help them. But beyond the book, I understand we have a book coming out and there's a lot of people that can read that. But who else do you really like to work with and how do you provide value for them?
So people can find me on LinkedIn, Danielle Cobo. Definitely on LinkedIn the most. I'm on every social media platform, but LinkedIn's where I typically go. Also the podcast, Unstoppable Grit podcast with Danielle Cobo. Majority of the people that I work with are people that have been in their career for, maybe 5, 10 years, and they're feeling stuck. They're feeling burnt out. They're overwhelmed, and they're saying, what do I do next? Maybe they want to find a new job. Maybe they want to get promoted. Maybe they're in sales and they want to earn, sales. In our world, it's President's Club is what we do. So it's really for those professionals who are wanting to take that next step and they want the guidance and the accountability and the support to achieve their goals.
Excellent. Final question is, you get the floor to say whatever you want. So if I was a terrible host and forgot to ask about something or ask a key follow-up question that you just needed to hammer home, you got the floor.
Okay. What does grit mean to you?
You're asking me?
I'm asking you. You've asked such great questions of me. I have questions for you.
It's a great one. I think grit is, it's just the ability to persevere and to keep going forward. I think that's how I would define it. And I don't even define it as, well, I guess to know you're going forward, you have to have a goal or you have to have some direction or target. So I do think that's a piece of it, but I think just the ability to keep fighting, 98% of people somewhere along the way don't. They somehow settle and they somehow give up and they somehow stop believing in themselves or their dreams. And so I think as long as you can keep fighting you have grit. And I think you owe it to yourself and you owe it to everyone in your circle to do everything in your power to maintain that ability to keep going forward.
Yes. Well said. Thank you.
Danielle, this was amazing. Thank you so much. It was better than expected, and I had high expectations for it out the gate. So I really appreciate you being here, sharing your knowledge and wisdom with our audience. I wish you the best, and I am really looking forward to following your journey on LinkedIn and elsewhere.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.